Chuck Norris. The name alone commands respect. From action-packed movies to memes that portray him as an unbeatable force, Chuck's legend has been built on a foundation of strength, discipline, and an unyielding will to win. But behind those iconic roundhouse kicks and heroic moments on screen, there's a man who's faced the toughest battles of all, battles that no one could see. What if I told you that the greatest struggle Chuck Norris ever endured wasn't in the ring, but in the quiet, personal regrets that haunted him every day? The real story of Chuck Norris is a journey of loss, redemption, and the painful realization that true strength isn't about invincibility, it's about embracing your flaws. So forget what you thought you knew. This is the untold truth of Chuck Norris, a warrior who learned the hardest lesson of all, that sometimes strength lies in surrender. Before the discipline, before the fame, Chuck Norris's early life was defined by instability and quiet insecurity. He grew up in a struggling household marked by financial hardship and constant movement. His father battled personal issues that left a lasting impact, and the absence of a stable role model forced Chuck to mature early, but without direction. Shy, non-athletic, and often overlooked, he didn't fit the image of strength people would later associate with his name. School wasn't a place of confidence. Chuck has spoken about feeling awkward and unsure of himself, lacking both physical presence and self-belief. He wasn't the tough kid, the leader, or the standout. Instead, he drifted, uncertain of where he belonged or what his future held. The environment around him offered few opportunities, and expectations were low. Survival, not ambition, was the focus. By his late teens, Chuck was searching for an escape, something that could give him purpose and structure. With limited options and no clear path forward, the military began to look less like a calling and more like a lifeline. It wasn't about glory or heroism. It was about leaving behind a life that felt stuck and stepping into something that promised order, direction, and a chance to become someone stronger than who he was. The Air Force was meant to be Chuck Norris's escape. Instead, Korea felt like another reminder of how small he still felt inside. Stationed at Osan Air Base in 1958, Chuck wore the uniform of a military policeman, but confidence didn't come with rank. He was quiet, withdrawn, and isolated, surrounded by men who seemed to belong in a world he still felt locked out of. The cold, the distance from home, and the constant sense of invisibility echoed the childhood he thought he had left behind. He later admitted he felt lost, existing rather than living. Letters to his mother went unwritten. Questions about his worth followed him everywhere. Then, on a rare day off, Chuck stopped outside a small Korean martial arts school. Through the window, he watched disciplined movements unlike anything he'd known. This wasn't rage or violence, it was control, purpose, calm strength. Fear kept him frozen outside for nearly an hour. The old voice whispered that he didn't belong, but something deeper pushed him through the door. Training was humiliating at first. He was slow, clumsy, and far behind other students. His body hurt. His pride hurt more. Yet for the first time, failure didn't come with abuse. It came with patience. Tong Soo-do taught Chuck that strength wasn't born from anger, but from discipline. Night after night, he returned, bleeding hands and aching muscles slowly giving way to control and focus. He didn't leave Korea confident or healed, but he left with something more important, a path, and the understanding that strength was a choice made every single day. When Chuck Norris returned to the United States in 1962, he carried a black belt and a quiet sense of purpose. But America wasn't waiting for him. Korean martial arts were virtually unknown, and Tong Soo-do meant nothing to employers or casting agents. Chuck married his high school sweetheart, Diane Holacek, and took whatever work he could find just to survive. File clerk jobs, long hours, low pay, fluorescent-lit offices that felt like cages. The confidence he had begun to build in Korea was tested daily. By day, he sorted paperwork and swallowed frustration. By night, he trained alone. In narrow hallways and cramped apartments, Chuck practiced kicks and forms until exhaustion drowned out doubt. He wasn't training for fame or competition. He was training to keep the man he'd become in Korea from disappearing. Still, the old voice crept back in, his father's verdict: "You're nothing." Desperation finally forced a leap. In 1964, with bills piling up and a growing family, Chuck opened a small karate school in Torrance, California. The dojo was barely more than a storefront, cracked mirrors, creaking floors, and weeks of silence. No students, no recognition, just Chuck sitting alone, watching cars pass by, wondering if he had made the biggest mistake of his life. Then, slowly, people came. One student, then a few more. Chuck taught the only way he knew: discipline over talent, persistence over ego. Word spread quietly. By the late 1960s, Chuck stepped into tournament competition, winning not with flash, but with precision and control. Titles followed, respect followed. For the first time in America, Chuck Norris was no longer invisible. Chuck Norris's life shifted the moment Bruce Lee walked into it. The two met in the late 1960s, introduced through the tight-knit martial arts community in California. Bruce was different from anyone Chuck had ever encountered, blazing fast, philosophical, and completely uninterested in tradition for tradition's sake. Where Chuck relied on structure and discipline, Bruce moved with raw expression and speed. At first, the contrast was jarring, but respect came quickly. The two trained together, exchanging techniques and ideas, pushing each other beyond comfort. Bruce saw something in Chuck that others missed: presence, control, a quiet intensity that translated perfectly to the screen. It's been said that Bruce personally encouraged Chuck to step into acting, insisting his skill and demeanor belonged in front of a camera, not hidden inside a dojo. That belief led to a life-altering opportunity. In 1972, Chuck was cast as Bruce Lee's opponent in Way of the Dragon. The role wasn't large, but it was unforgettable. Their fight inside the Roman Colosseum became legendary, not because Chuck won, but because he lost with dignity, calm, power, precision. Audiences didn't see a villain, they saw a force. Overnight, everything changed. Casting directors took notice. Hollywood finally had a new kind of action figure, one who didn't boast, didn't smile, and didn't need words. Yet behind the scenes, Chuck felt the pressure closing in. Fame was knocking, but stepping through that door meant abandoning the life he had built. And just as momentum surged, tragedy struck, cutting the bridge between past and future in a way no one saw coming. After Way of the Dragon, Hollywood doors opened fast, but not gently. Chuck Norris was suddenly in demand, cast in action films that leaned heavily on his real-world fighting ability. Movies like Breaker Breaker and Good Guys Wear Black turned him into a recognizable name, but the workload was relentless. Long shoots, constant training, travel that kept him away from home for months at a time. Behind the tough guy image, his personal life began to fracture. Chuck was still married to Diane, the woman who had stood by him through poverty, doubt, and obscurity. But fame reshapes everything. Schedules clashed, distance grew. The quiet discipline that had once held their life together now competed with Hollywood pressure and constant absence. By 1988, after nearly 30 years of marriage, the relationship ended. Around the same time, a deeply personal revelation surfaced. It later became public that Chuck had fathered a child in the early 1960s while stationed overseas, something he hadn't known about for decades. When the truth came out, it forced him to confront a past he couldn't undo. He chose responsibility over silence, acknowledging his son and forming a relationship despite the shock it caused. Success had given Chuck everything he once dreamed of: respect, security, recognition. But it also demanded a price he never expected to pay. And while audiences saw an unbreakable hero, Chuck privately wrestled with the realization that strength doesn't protect you from regret. Still, the most challenging chapter of his life wasn't behind him yet. It was coming, quietly, devastatingly, and far closer than anyone imagined. Chuck Norris had conquered the world in so many ways, but on December 1, 2013, everything changed with a phone call every parent fears. Chuck's eldest daughter, Dina, had died unexpectedly at 46 from complications of a heart attack. Dina wasn't just Chuck's daughter, she represented a relationship complicated by years of absence. Throughout her childhood, Chuck was always chasing his career, tournaments, movies, TV fame, leaving Dina with a distant father. When Chuck's first marriage ended in 1988, it didn't just break a partnership, it fractured his bond with his children. Dina, Mike, and Eric felt the absence of their father in ways no amount of fame could fix. Chuck always thought there'd be time to repair it, but the phone call shattered that hope. Standing at Dina's funeral, Chuck was surrounded by people who had shared those small, everyday moments with her, things he missed. The guilt was overwhelming. "I wasn't there," Chuck confessed to a close friend. "I thought I was building something for them, a legacy, security, but what good is any of it if I wasn't there when they needed me?" The loss sent Chuck into a personal crisis. He withdrew from public life, spending months alone on his Texas ranch. He began to replay the memories of missed birthdays, skipped school plays, and phone calls cut short. Even his second marriage to Gina wasn't enough to erase the guilt of his past mistakes. Chuck admitted years later, "You can't go back, and that's something I'll carry until the day I die." As Chuck wrestled with the painful reality of Dina's death, he was forced to confront something deeper, his own regrets about fatherhood. The realization hit him hard. In trying to build a legacy for his children, he had missed the opportunity to truly be there for them. "I thought I was building something for them, security, a legacy," Chuck admitted later. "But what good is any of it if I wasn't there when they needed me?" His daughter's death was a wake-up call, a stark reminder that legacy isn't just about wealth or fame, it's about the time you spend with those you love. Chuck's sense of guilt didn't just stem from Dina's passing, it was amplified by his second marriage to Gina O'Kelly. He had worked hard to be a more present father to their twin sons, Dakota and Dan Lee, learning from the mistakes of his past. But even as he tried to make up for lost time with his younger children, the sting of his earlier failures remained. His past mistakes with Dina and his older sons, Mike and Eric, were something he could never undo. "You can't go back," Chuck reflected in a rare interview. "You can apologize, you can change, you can be better moving forward, but you can't undo the absences." His attempt at redemption with his second family only served to highlight the painful truth that no amount of growth could undo the years of missed moments with his older children. The loss of Dina and his failure as a father was a profound turning point for Chuck. It forced him to examine the meaning of strength, not in the physical sense, but in the emotional courage to confront and accept his flaws. The loss of Dina wasn't just a personal tragedy for Chuck. It also forced him to confront something he had never truly faced, his own mortality. In a career defined by surviving impossible stunts and defying physical limits, Chuck had always seen himself as invincible. He'd survived car crashes, falls, explosions, and broken bones, all the things that would have ended most people's careers, but nothing had prepared him for this. Chuck's body, once a symbol of strength, was beginning to betray him. The survivor of countless near-death experiences on screen now found himself vulnerable in ways he could never have anticipated. In 2017, at the age of 77, Chuck was diagnosed with severe coronary artery disease. His heart, the engine that had powered his legendary physical feats, was failing. Multiple blockages were cutting off blood flow, threatening a heart attack that could take his life at any moment. For the first time in his life, Chuck couldn't fight his way out of the situation. He wasn't on a movie set anymore, where he could push through the pain or perform a heroic stunt. He was in a hospital bed, completely reliant on doctors and surgeons to save his life. The same man who had prided himself on his self-reliance and invincibility was now at the mercy of medical professionals. It was a humbling experience. The surgery that followed, a double bypass, was grueling. For 6 hours, Chuck's chest was opened and his heart was temporarily stopped while machines kept him alive. When he woke up, the reality of his vulnerability hit him hard. Lying there, knowing someone else was literally holding my heart in their hands, was more terrifying than any fight I'd ever been in, Chuck later confessed. The recovery from Chuck's heart surgery was a brutal one. For a man who had once performed 1,000 push-ups without breaking a sweat, simply sitting up or taking a deep breath felt like failure. The physical strength he had relied on for decades was no longer enough. He struggled to walk to the bathroom without assistance. Even the simplest tasks were overwhelming. Nurses hovered, monitoring every move, and the once unstoppable warrior was reduced to a shell of his former self. But the most difficult part wasn't the physical pain, it was the emotional reckoning that came with it. For years, Chuck had defined himself by his discipline, his ability to push through pain and adversity. He had built his entire identity on self-reliance and strength. But now, as he lay in that hospital bed, Chuck realized that survival required something different: surrender. It required accepting that strength sometimes comes from admitting weakness and asking for help. Chuck's wife, Gina, became his lifeline during this difficult period. She not only managed his medications and daily routines, but she also forced him to rest and recover. "She saved my life," Chuck later said. "Not metaphorically, but literally. I wanted to give up. She wouldn't let me." Gina's unwavering support was the anchor that kept Chuck grounded during his darkest moments. The surgery marked a turning point for Chuck, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. For the first time, he acknowledged that there were some battles he couldn't win through sheer willpower. His health crisis forced him to accept a painful truth: no amount of toughness could fight time and fragility. As Chuck Norris enters his 80s, he's no longer the invincible warrior that made him a household name. The battle scars are no longer just physical, they're emotional, personal, and a reflection of the life he has lived. Chuck's journey has been one of immense highs and devastating lows, but in his final years, he has learned the most important lesson of all. Legacy isn't about the trophies you collect or the fame you garner. It's about the relationships you nurture and the love you give while you're still here. Legacy is not what you leave behind, Chuck reflects. It is what you give while you're still here. His greatest regret wasn't the battles he lost or the roles he didn't play. It was the time he couldn't get back with the people he loved. As Chuck continues to fight for his health and find a new sense of balance, his focus has shifted away from chasing fame to embracing the quiet moments that truly matter. Now, instead of performing in movies or attending interviews, Chuck cherishes his time with Gina, Dakota, and Dan Lee. Every day is an opportunity to show up for his family, to let them know they matter, and to create memories that will outlive any Hollywood accolade. Through everything, the fame, the failure, the triumphs, and the losses, Chuck Norris has come to understand that real strength isn't in avoiding pain or conquering the impossible. It's in the courage to face the truth, to be vulnerable, and to keep going when the world expects you to quit. As his story continues to unfold, Chuck's greatest lesson is simple. True strength is found in how we rise after we fall. It's in the love we give, the moments we share, and the legacy we build with the people who matter most.